When I was in graduate school, I took a seminar with the musicologist Lawrence Dreyfus. Dreyfus assigned each one of us to do research on an eminent musicologist so that we might understand what it was that a musicologist actually did. One of the students, Kwame, was from Ghana in Africa, and when he was doing his presentation, he made an odd statement. He said that the Ghanese musicologist that he was presenting had researched the music of some of the tribes of Ghana, but not all of them. When asked why, he replied that the musicologist simply couldn't understand the music of some of the tribes. This was a puzzling statement. A Western musicologist would not say that he couldn't understand the music of another country, even if that country was remote and exotic. And then it dawned on me what Kwame had actually meant. He meant that the musicologist literally could not understand the music because it was like it was in a foreign language. This is because it was in a foreign language. The African languages that Kwame was talking about are tonal languages. In these languages, much of the meaning is carried by specific pitches and rhythms. In fact, the pitches and rhythms are so prominent in these languages that a listener can hear words even in the instrumental music of these cultures. There's the idea floating around that music evolved from language. The idea is that early languages were like the languages in Ghana. They were tonal languages. Most languages gradually lost their tonal qualities and became the modern languages we know today. A few of them did not. Languages that did not lose their tonal qualities include African languages, Chinese, and Vietnamese. One language that did lose its tonal qualities is modern Greek. There's quite a bit of information about what the ancient Greek tonal language sounded like. Most of this information is inferred from diacritical marks. These marks were placed above the text to indicate changes in pitch. They were similar to the neumes used in medieval musical notation to indicate rising and falling pitches. So maybe ancient Greek speech and music used the same rhythms and pitches. Maybe these patterns gradually disappeared from speech, but were retained in music. Whether music actually evolved from a language or not, there's one fact that's indisputable, and that is that most music is and always has been vocal. It has words. Surely, there's some kind of a relationship between vocal music and the words themselves. Let's look at a popular Christmas hymn, O Little Town of Bethlehem. We know that the words were used to structure the music because the words were written first. In 1868, an Episcopal priest in Philadelphia, Philip Brooks, wrote them and handed them off to his church organist, Louis Redner. Redner put off writing the tune, but on Saturday night he says he was roused from sleep late in the night, hearing an angel strain whispering in my ear, and, seizing a piece of music paper, I jotted down the treble of the tune as we now have it, and, on Sunday morning before going to church, I filled in the harmony. Let's look first at the words. The first line is 8 syllables long. If we scan the poetry and mark the accents, we find that these 8 syllables are organized into groups of 2 syllables, with an unaccented syllable at the beginning followed by an accented syllable. There is an 8-syllable line followed by a 6-syllable line with the same accentuation pattern. These 2 lines form a group, with the first line ending in a comma and the second in a period or exclamation point. If the music is going to follow the rhythm of the words, it should start with a pickup, because the first syllable is unaccented. Since the pattern of syllables is organized in 2s, it would make sense for the meter of the music to be 2-4 or 4-4. Each syllable needs a separate note, say a quarter note, so the first 2-line group should take up 14 quarter note beats. Given that the work starts on an upbeat, the last beat should fall on the downbeat of the 4th full measure in 4-4. Each measure has 4 beats, so 3 measures times 4 beats equals 12 beats. The 13th beat starts measure 4, and the unaccounted for 14th beat is the pickup. The rhythmic structure of the music actually follows this pattern. The one anomaly is that there is a pattern of 2/8 notes on the word we in the 3rd full measure. This is a melisma, by which I mean that there are 2 notes sung to the same syllable. So while it's a nice artistic touch, it doesn't alter the basic rhythmic structure of the tune. It should not come as a shock to find out that the structure of language is not always so straightforward. I remember a day when I first started teaching, and I'd managed to get through most of the class without making too big a fool of myself. On that particular day, I got finished early and I was feeling lucky, so I asked if there were any questions. One of the students asked if there was any relationship between the words and the music in a Schubert song we'd just been analyzing. I was happy to field that question because I was sure I knew the answer. I knew that the rhythm of the words, particularly the poetic meter, gave structure to the music. I rummaged around in my memory to find a poem that demonstrated what I meant, and then I remembered that I had memorized the soliloquy from Hamlet in high school. I remembered from high school that Shakespeare liked to use a certain kind of poetic meter, known as iambic pentameter. What that means is that the poetry is structured in two-syllable groups. The first syllable is unaccented and the second is accented. That's known as an iamb, and it's the same kind of pattern that we saw in our little town of Bethlehem. The pentameter part means that there are 5 of these iambs per line. Armed with that knowledge, I boldly predicted that every line of Hamlet would have 10 syllables, alternating unaccented and accented syllables. I confidently wrote the first line of the soliloquy on the board. I counted the iambs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shakespeare had added an extra unaccented syllable at the end of the line. In fact, the first 4 lines all had extra syllables. He'd also made a number of other rhythmic changes. The second line starts with an accented rather than an unaccented syllable. This strong weak pattern is known as a trochee. There are also places where 2 unaccented syllables appear in a row, pyrics, and maybe even a place where 2 accents appear in a row, a spondee. The first line also appears to be divided into 2 halves with a break, a so-called caesura in the middle. The caesura makes me question the rhythm of the second half of the line. I don't think its first 2 words, that is, should be an iamb, that is, but rather a trochee, that is. I found all these rhythmic anomalies to be confusing, so I decided to check the first source for the play, the so-called first folio. It contains a different text. Here's the first line. To be or not to be? Aye, there's the point. It's simpler. There's no rhythmic change after the caesura, no trochaic substitution. There's no extra syllable at the end. It's pure iambic pentameter, but I think it's the worse for it. I think the version that we know today is better, and I think it's better because Shakespeare varied the rhythm of the words in order to make the line more interesting. We don't talk a lot about rhythm in music theory. I think this is because we assume that because we understand the concept of meter, we understand everything we need to know. But real music doesn't always follow the meter. It contains hemiolas and syncopations that throw the rhythm off from the meter, and in so doing, makes the music come to life. We've seen how Shakespeare has done this with the rhythm of language. Next time, we'll examine how this works in music.